Hey, this is Joe Forward with the State Bar of Wisconsin. We're here at the Wisconsin Solo and Small Firm Conference in Wisconsin Dells, and I'm here with Karin Iwata, who just gave a pre-conference seminar. Karin, how you doing?
I'm doing extremely well. Happy to be here.
So Karin works at EMyth Worldwide, and Karin, can you tell us what you do for them?
Well, I've been with EMyth Worldwide for over 12 years and have served in a variety of capacities, from executive coach to part of Michael Gerber, our founder's leadership team, to product development, and now I travel around the country and Canada giving seminars and keynote speeches and workshops for all kinds of business owners in all sectors.
And Karin, can you tell us what EMyth means?
Yeah, sure. The EMyth stands for the entrepreneurial myth, which is the belief that most businesses are started by pure entrepreneurs, people who have capital and business expertise, who go out in the marketplace and decide that they're going to fill a particular need that exists. And it's a myth that most businesses are started that way. In fact, they're started by technicians, people who are really skilled, have background, perhaps are doing work that they really love to do, and they decide that they're going to start a business doing that work. The problem is that they make a fatal assumption, which is that because they know how to do the work of the business, they know how to run a business that does that work. So EMyth Worldwide comes in to bridge the gap between that terrific expert technical expertise, as with attorneys, and the expertise required to really run a great and successful law practice.
Yeah. And so lawyers fall into this category in a lot of cases, is that correct?
I would say in 99% of the cases they do, yeah, because lawyers, I mean, they have a lot of education, obviously, but there's a missing link, and that is, how do you actually run a practice that is successful and sustainable over time, and one that will over time build equity value, so that when you decide that you want to leave the practice, you have options with regard to how you're going to make that exit. Yeah.
And you mentioned that lawyers tend to develop practices that are sort of dependent on them, and that they should start developing practices that are dependent on a system instead of... So can you tell us what you mean by that?
Well, sure. So lawyers, for instance, attorneys, start their practices very often as a solo and necessarily are doing everything in that practice themselves. And they do it for good reason. They do it to conserve resources, to kind of learn the ropes very often as they're going along. But they soon find that doing it all themselves is very limiting. So inadvertently, as the practice begins to grow and as they begin to bring new people into the practice, either staff or associates or whatever, the entire practice is still dependent on them because they never thought to do it any other way. So what we advocate and suggest and have seen work cross sectors in businesses worldwide is to build it with the end in mind. Build it according to what you would like the practice to be ultimately, so that you as a practice owner are free to do the work you love to do rather than the work that you have to do, and yet the systems and the processes that are used to operate the business are a reflection of your personal values, standards, and priorities. So your business then becomes a reflection of you, but it is not you. And what we're seeing, and we saw in our session today, is that so many attorneys, their practice is their life, and there's very little separation between the two. What we advocate is building the practice so it actually serves the life that you want to have. Yeah. And the way to do that is to make it so that other people can help you, can get some of those essential processes done, because you have systems in place that you can train them to do easily. Yeah.
And you did a sort of a exercise that helped, I think, and that was to have them jot down some of the things they do on a daily basis, yes, and figure out which of those things require a law license. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Well, yeah, what we find is that what you do every day, the tasks that you engage in every day, your typical to-do list, is a lot of things. Most importantly, I think, an indicator of how you're thinking about your business, because our actions follow our thinking. So to understand the way you think about your practice, look at what you're doing every day. And what we found in the room, and what we find typically, is that attorneys are spending a tremendous amount of time doing all the ancillary things related to the practice, not necessarily practicing law. So what we would suggest is you track your time for a period of time and to see how much real strategic work, working on the business to move it forward, to move the practice forward you're doing, versus how much administrative work you're doing, how much micromanaging you're doing, how much of those things that seem important in the day but don't actually move the practice to where you want it to be. It's really about engaging more entrepreneurial thinking to the practice of law and to the realization of creating a business from that practice.
Karin, this has been very informative. I appreciate you joining us today.
Pleasure. Happy to be here.